This is TWiT.
We on this show have talked in the past about Amazon and its troublesome history with its employees, and in the way that, the word pee bottle comes to mind. The word Twitter bashing comes to mind. Phrase Twitter bashing comes to mind. There's been lots of stuff that's going on, but what I learned in reading this article on CNET from Laura Hautala was that this has kind of been going on for a while in one way or another. And so joining us today is Laura to kind of talk about the historical context and the latest instances of Amazon workers looking to, in their eyes, get paid for part of their work. So welcome back to the show, Laura.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let us start kind of at the beginning here. So this story in particular is about an ongoing issue that's not unique to Amazon per se. Can you talk a little bit about the history of workers looking to be compensated for the time that they spend in kind of processes that have been set forth by the companies for which they work?
Yeah, so there's this issue with work in industry or light industry where when you're getting ready for your job, things that are required by your employer, whether it's coming through a security screening or getting screened for COVID-19 or putting on some protective gear, sharpening your knives if you work at a butcher facility, anything like that is kind of considered is something you're doing prior to your work or after your work, coming through the security screening on the way out, things like that. There's a legal question of whether that is part of your principal work activities. And if it's not, then federal law says you don't actually have to pay employees for that time. So the things like sharpening knives, putting on protective gear, that has been seen as essential to those jobs. That is part of the principal activity to do your job safely and effectively. So that should be compensated. But so far, there is more of a legal gray area and more decisions in favor of employers saying they don't have to pay for things like security checks under federal law.
Understood. Yeah. So in this case, the security checks are something that when you were going into your shift happens, but also something that surprised me that I didn't realize before was how it can impact lunch breaks and the period of time after their shift ends. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the specifics there with the size of the warehouses and also the federal regulations around employees and the breaks that they're supposed to be allowed to take?
Right. So going into Amazon facilities right now, the main issue is COVID-19 screenings. And then coming out, it's the security checks. And in the past, workers said that those checks took a really long time, 10, 15, maybe even 30 minutes, waiting in line and then having your pockets or bags searched. And so that is something that is, that they weren't able to get compensated for under a Supreme Court ruling in 2014. So the question of the breaks is a different matter, though, because not under federal law, but under state law in California, where there are a lot of Amazon warehouse workers, you're supposed to get at least 10 minutes of rest, and you have to have 30-minute lunch break, and the rules around that are really strict. So if you're going through these security screenings or your lunch break and you're getting stopped and searched, are you really getting that full 30-minute break? Or if you're walking across, a warehouse that may be 800,000 square feet to get to your break room and you only get to sit down for 5 minutes, are you really getting that break? A judge has ruled that those questions can't be answered in a class action. And so those claims won't be decided in a court unless a higher judge throws out that ruling. But it really speaks to something that whether or not is legal really bothers a lot of workers. It's just like, I'm not really getting a break. I'm not really getting all the time I'm supposed to get. Even if it's a legal gray area, people find it to be an indignity, essentially. So there's this open question of Amazon has control of their time and it has these requirements, or it just it's built into the way the facilities are. And workers, have been trying in court to get paid for that.
Now, people might hear the part where you said a judge has decided it can't be a class action, or can't be decided in court. And of course, that could be overturned, like you said. But did that judge give any reason for why they felt that this was something that couldn't be decided at this level? And did the judge give any recourse to the employees for what they were supposed to do instead to have this decided?
Well, so you were actually right the first time. It can't be decided as a class action. And that's actually a pretty high bar to clear for workers to get through to have a certified class where they can press claims like this for unpaid wages. And the problem is when things are not the same in every facility, it to the court looks like, well, not everyone is going through a metal detector. Not everyone has to wait. Sometimes the metal detectors aren't working. Sometimes there's a line, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes workers clock out and then talk to their friends and then go through security. So how are we supposed to know exactly how much workers should be owed? And so the question is, can these claims be paid on a class basis? And the reason that workers and lawyers try to do that is because adjudicating like a single claim where, I think probably owe me a few $100s, that's small claims court. So the class action is really the tool, the powerful tool for workers who think that kind of en masse they've been denied wages.
Understood. Okay, so this is sort of a matter of inconsistencies that play a role in this. So I guess in that case, are the inconsistencies the same, or have they increased with the introduction of COVID to this mix? I guess what I'm asking is, of course, we have the historical context of those security checks, but as there have been more complaints and more focus with the COVID-19 screenings, is that also the case that those cannot kind of be included or be used as a means to follow through with a class action?
That is still up in the air. So a judge has not decided whether or not workers can make those claims. I think that it is probably a different situation. Most employers will argue that something shouldn't be certified as a class because it's too different everywhere. It's up to a judge to decide whether that's the case or not. It is just a really common legal argument from an employer. But with the COVID-19 checks, Amazon is going to rely on its earlier win where it didn't have to pay for the security check, saying that this isn't something that's particularly important for their work, that they could do their work without doing that activity. And the plaintiffs are arguing that that's not the case. And they're also arguing that there's federal guidance that those kinds of health checks should be paid. So that case is the one that's most up in the air. Those claims for that unpaid time could still go forward.
Interesting. Okay. And then let's talk about then, of course, going through the courts is one way. And is this a means of setting precedent for future cases? Is this because I remember in your article, and I'm trying to remember where it came from, but there was kind of the judge had talked about sort of two ways that these things can go, where it's like big judgments where employees get money or end up making money off of it. And then there's another way where they end up having to kind of dissolve. The company ends up having to dissolve. But in this case, these are about setting precedent. Can you talk about the different examples there?
Yeah. So, Amazon has become a huge employer. They say they employ 1.3 million people globally, and there may be more than half of those that are in the US. And also there's all the people who've already churned through Amazon because they do reportedly have really high turnover, especially in warehouse work. So millions of people have worked for them. There's going to be more lawsuits as a result of that. And because they're a big company, they're not going to disappear overnight if they lose in court. They're going to be around to pay. So that's kind of in terms of somebody who's considering suing their employer, that, if they can win, there is going to be a judgment there at the end of the day. And Amazon has shown itself really willing to fight in court. So it really seems like Amazon could be a real heavyweight in kind of influencing the way workplace law is enforced everywhere, because it's going to be really going to the mat on these cases, and there's likely going to be a lot more of these cases.
Gotcha. Understood. And then the other example or the other means is unionizing, and is often used as a way to, or at least is attempted to be used as a way to bring some level of bargaining to the table. And I don't want to spoil it because folks should go read this piece, but I really like how you ended this piece. But ahead of that, can you just talk quickly about the kind of Amazon employees' attempts to unionize and how that could help these employees if that ever happened, if that were to go through?
Right. So if Amazon employees were ever to successfully unionize, they would have the ability to say, you know what, if you're not going to pay us for these COVID-19 screenings, we would like, an extra 50 cents per hour. Increase our wage because, we're spending a lot of time in these screenings. We know it's for the common good, but it's time out of our day. And so we want to bargain for something higher. Right now, that's not really an option for workers who are ununionized, employed by really big companies. They can complain to their managers. They can even organize strikes or walkouts without being unionized. But Amazon in particular has been found by the National Labor Relations Board to retaliate against workers who organize that kind of action. So, right now, unionizing isn't really on the table, or union action and bargaining isn't really on the table. But, that if that was to happen, then the employees would have kind of a means to get around, this might be a legal gray area. You don't really have to pay us, but, come on, this is our time. So pay us some other way.